Hello, viewers. Thank you for joining us for another segment of Camera On with Authors Inside. I'm very excited today about our guest. This brother is passionate about giving back, and I've been some places with him, juvenile hall, and did some other work with him. And I'm really excited about this interview. But before we get started, can you hit the like button and subscribe so you can receive notification for more content like this? Appreciate it. Now, go ahead, brother. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
All right. Can you introduce yourself to our viewers?
Yeah, of course. My name is Luis Venegas. I met Emmanuel while we were at CMC together a few years ago. Yeah, I was incarcerated at the age of 15. I was tried as an adult, sentenced to life in adult prison. At 17, I was transferred to an adult prison and spent almost 19 years incarcerated. I've been out now 4 years. Just actually, it was 4 years a few weeks ago. So that's interesting that it's been 4 years. It seems like it hasn't been that long. At the same time, it seems like it has been that long. If that makes sense. But yeah,
Yes.
just being grateful to I'm grateful to be out and being able to enjoy life and be with family. So that's kind of in a condensed version of
Yeah.
what it's been like.
Okay, Luis, the 19 years you served, was that your first time incarcerated?
It was, yeah. I had never been arrested before, and well, I was 15 years old, so wasn't a long life outside before. But yeah, first time being arrested, and yeah,
Okay, for 15 years old and going away for 19 years. Can you share with our viewers what was that 19 years like? Share with us a little bit about your journey and your mindset, and anything that you can tell us.
yeah. So the 19 years, it's also interesting that that seems also like it flew by. Like looking back on it, it seems like 19 years, and it was like quick, right? But in reality, it was over half my life that I spent incarcerated. But yeah, it had a lot of ups and downs, more downs than ups, more ups towards the end of my incarceration when I started making better choices and working on myself. Um, in the beginning, though, it was a struggle. I mean, I was 15. I spent almost 2 years in juvenile hall, and then at 17 years old, I was transferred to adult prison, which was like a very different culture shock compared to juvenile hall. Juvenile hall had developed like somewhat um, quasi relationships, I can say, with staff and people that had been there for almost 2 years and got to know, right? Um, Prison was a lot different. Prison was very more isolating, as there wasn't opportunities for growth or rehabilitation where I went. Because when I was 17, they sent me to a maximum security prison, so it was very rare to see any self-help or any programmings that we can use to benefit and to grow, to work on ourselves. That was over a decade of my life in the level 4 maximum security yards. So there was very little incentive to change, and I saw a lot of negativity inside that prisons, then in those prisons, because the environment was just very negative. It was surrounded by gang mentalities. I myself had a gang mentality because I used to be a gang member when I was outside, and when I went inside, I continued with that mentality for the better part of my incarceration. So yeah, those first 10, 12 years in those maximum security, it wasn't a lot of growth for me, and there was a lot of hopelessness, a lot of dark, and a lot of just not
Mm.
knowing and uncertain of what the future held. Because I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life in prison. Actually, there was a lot of moments like that.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Now, what it's you said you saw a lot of negativity. So what would you say was the most traumatic thing you saw throughout your 19 years in prison?
Oh, wow. I mean, saw a lot of different things, and without getting too much details, but I mean, drugs were very common, so a lot of overdosing, a lot of knew guys that actually died while in prison, assaults. It was I mean, some things were very graphic because they were very close in proximity, and I don't know how detailed I can get on this, but uh,
Um,
it's just it was a lot of dark and negative things going on.
I mean, I appreciate your raw, uncut truth because you can just tell your truth, because we're trying to let average youth know that because some people glamorize going to prison and thinking it's cool, so we're trying to deter average youth and young adults. Look, man, you have no idea. There's a whole other world for you out there that you don't want to get in there. So your truth, your raw truth will help.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So one of the things I remember, I was in a day room and there was two guys that were assaulting another guy, and he ended up going into his cell, coming back out of his cell, and like in an instant, just lunged at one of them and ended up he had a pencil with him and ended up sticking a pencil in the eyeball of the other of one of the
Mm,
individuals. And seeing this, I think I was like 18 or 19, and seeing this, like you can literally see the pencil sticking out of that guy's eye, and of course he was screaming, and it was just a lot of blood everywhere, and it was both ways because even before that, that guy that did that he was the one being assaulted. So he was actually bloodied up and on the floor yelling. And it was just it was very dark. And at that age, me being a different race than that, and it's the prison, the way it's structured around segregating the races, there was nothing in my mind at that moment that I could do. That was in prison world. That is was none of my business, so I didn't get involved or anything like that. It was I was just spectator at that point and just looking. But I remember thinking like, wow, this is 18 years old and I'm seeing this right in front of my eyes, and that was just the beginning, right? That was the beginning of my stay. Um, I knew a couple of guys that I would work daily with, and then next thing you know, they get assaulted on the yard, and they one of them actually ended up dying. This guy I went to work with every day while I was there, and even myself, I was involved in I committed assaults in there on behalf of the prison gang because I had allowed myself to continue that gang mentality, and I told myself that I had to quote do what I had to do while I was in there to survive, and that was my way to go with the flow and to do what was expected or asked of me at that age. I just didn't know any other way at that age. I thought that that's what I was supposed to do, and if I didn't, then I would be myself getting assaulted, and I just didn't know how to cope with that. So my way was to just go with the flow, not stand out, and that meant continuing with my gang mentality and continuing with destructive and harmful behavior. And that went on for over 10, 12 years until things started to change little by little. Didn't happen at once, but I started making better decisions and eventually was given an opportunity to come home after I had shown that I was making better decisions. I had grown and matured, and I had to demonstrate that for a number of years before I was allowed to come home.
Thank you for sharing that, man. You seem at a very young age you experienced a lot of violence and you was violent yourself. Um, that's very yeah, that's very interesting to know. Can you share with our viewers what motivated you to change to turn things around?
There was a few different things, like me growing up and going into prison. Like I always, I viewed myself as a decent person, even though I was doing some very harmful things, which I regret, right? But in my mind, I was wrapped up in that mentality, like this is the way the life is, this is the way the life, this is what I have to do, type of thing. But I always saw myself like I don't want to commit harm. I just didn't realize how to separate those and actually put into action all the good thoughts that I had. And then going into prison at a young age didn't help with that either because it just brewed more negativity and more hopelessness that I allowed myself to continue that mentality. But as I started growing and maturing, those thoughts of like, man, I just want peace in my life. I want to do things better kept coming up. And they didn't happen right away. Like I was still doing negative things, even while having those thoughts of wanting to do good. But like I said, little things started happening. Like I went to administrative segregation a few times, which we call a hole. Is basically they lock you in a cell and you have your thoughts to kind of accompany you, right? And a few of those times I was by myself in the hole, in the cell by myself with just my thoughts, no reading material, no distractions. And I remember very much in those times thinking, I should just do better choices. Why'd I do that again? Or what, like very much being hard on myself on why did I allow myself to continue with that mentality? But I was still growing and maturing at that time because I would still go back out and kind of continue that mentality and allow myself to go with the flow, quote unquote, go with the flow.
Yeah.
Um, but it's time started passing and little things started happening as far as um, like me wanting those thoughts, like those behaviors to change. And then bigger things started happening. Laws started to change and they started realizing that young people aren't as mature as at that age. And so there was a lot of laws being passed that made it possible for me to one day go home, right? So it kind of like motivated me to not only think those thoughts, but kind of
Mhm.
do actions that reflected those thoughts. And
Okay.
then
Yeah.
a couple other bigger things happened too. That my mom ended up passing away while I was incarcerated, and that really hit me good because she always saw the potential in me actually coming home, being that better person, one day being able to hug me, and when she unexpectedly passed away, it kind of like hit me like, whoa, I'm continue to do all of this, and she always had faith in me, and I never lived up to it, and now I can't, right? I can't demonstrate it to her, but it motivated me to start taking things more seriously. And then I started taking more classes, started working on myself more, and I started really reflecting on what the harm was that I had caused and the people that are still to this day harmed by my actions in the past. I had my hearings for the opportunity to come home. The first two times I was denied, but on those first three times, I was able to hear in person the harm I had caused the family of the person that I had harmed. And being able to be directly in front of them and hear their pain and really see the emotions really connected a lot of things for me. It connected like the pain of family, of moms not having their sons or otherwise, and it really like allowed me to see the emotion behind it and really connected for me. Like it's it's more than just it's more than just thinking about doing good. It's more than just about doing good. It's now doing good for the benefit of others, not only myself, but the benefit of others that I've harmed before. So that became a huge motivation for me. Like the harm I've caused people, it's not something I want to do ever again. And so that motivated me to like kind of that was the final motivation as far as allowing me to make decisions regardless of whatever could happen inside prison. So I started making way better decisions, and the last 6, 7 years of my incarceration,
Yeah.
I was able to be not only make good decisions but also help others where I could, whether that meant being a mentor in the substance abuse program, being a clerk at the college program, wherever I could help, I would. And it
Yeah.
was more than just for me. It was about the people I've harmed, my family who's always stuck by me.
Yeah.
It was about the community who I harmed, and I just wanted to be better and do better. So it kind of just allowed me to put
Yeah.
that into full gear at the end,
Yeah.
seeing how I had harmed people, and it's still a
Yeah.
motivation to me even 4 years out.
Yeah. That's because you also so it was accumulation of things,
It was accumulation of things.
you wanting better for yourself, your mom passing, you getting sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you hearing firsthand the harm that you have caused to the people, from the actual people that you harm, and that just connected everything with you. So, yeah, it seems like, yeah, yeah. Thank you for sharing that, brother. I appreciate it, and I'm sorry for your loss with your mom. I empathize with you because I lost my mom too as well when I was in prison. So I definitely empathize with you, and knowing they wanted better for me. She wanted better for me, and your mom wanted better for you. So, I, you know, my heart goes out to you.
Thank
So tell our viewers, you did a TED talk, didn't you? Do something like a TED talk? Can you tell us what brought that about, and what was your goal what you was trying to accomplish?
Yeah, that total randomness, I guess, luck, randomness. I worked at a nonprofit where we work closely with Cal Poly students, college students at the local university that actually helped our organization by volunteering to go inside the juvenile hall and provide pro-social programs for the youth that are incarcerated there. So I started off as a coordinator and a volunteer coordinator for that organization, and was able to connect with a few volunteers that were very very giving as far as their volunteer time and efforts to the juvenile hall. It just by randomness that one of those volunteers was connected with someone else that helped organize the TED Talks at the local university, Cal Poly, and they recommended me. They had obviously we had interacted, and they recommended me to the organizing students, and I did an interview, and eventually I was actually selected to speak if I wanted to. And so yeah, I ended up speaking, and the theme of the talks in general were about transcending the norm. But what I focused on my speech and my presentation was about us as a community, how we can contribute, right? And I talked about the importance of relationships. For me, that meant my relationships while I was incarcerated, and the positive impact that people have had throughout my life that I still remember to this day, that might not have known that they were impacting my life, but they nevertheless did. So I talked about staff at juvenile hall, volunteers at juvenile hall while I was there, and how they made me feel valued and humanized, compared to like when I was in prison, where it was the very opposite, where I didn't feel humanized, especially at the beginning. So I talked about those volunteers and staff at juvenile hall. I talked about a baseball coach that still to this day I appreciate his willingness to be there for me, even though at the time I didn't value that. He was willing to be there for me. He was a male role model. I remember thinking like, man, I want like his approval type thing, but I didn't value it the way I should have, and I wasn't grateful for it. But I talked about him. I talked about volunteers that would go into prison. It just what I was trying to convey was that they, as an audience, could have an impact, a positive impact on people that have been incarcerated, or know people that have been incarcerated, even if it's just by simply showing up. Like you don't even have to
Yeah,
like intentionally, just by being a kind person to someone. You never know if they've been incarcerated before and have had bad experiences with people, right? Or they themselves have been harmful to other people. Having a positive interaction with just anybody can kind of that ripple effect. If you that ripple effect, we talk about a lot of it in negative terms. It's as far as like we create a negative harmful action, and has a ripple effect on how it affects other people even down the line, right? But that ripple effect also applies if you do positive things. The positiveness of interactions with people, with organizations, with whoever can have a positive ripple effect on people we might not even know.
yeah.
So I talked about that, and talked about the importance of us being able to do that as a community. And so that
Um,
was kind of my intention for that talk.
yeah, yeah, and I saw your TED talk and I really loved it. I was also amazed about the statistics you brought into it when you were talking about the households across America. at least one or two family members have been been incarcerated, and just for you to bring statistics along with that, it really was an eye opener. Yeah, and so I really enjoyed your TED talk. If viewers wanted to see your TED talk, how can they go about seeing it?
It is on YouTube. I think they would have to just Google my name, I believe, or it was the San Luis Obispo TED Talk. So they
So
might
go
just be,
so just Google your name, Luis Venegas, right? And then
yes.
Sam Luis Bispo TED Talk.
Yeah, and it's on YouTube, so if they put it there, it should come up.
And viewers, y'all see his last name. So make sure you get his last name right.
Yeah, it
Luis
is.
Venegas, and then Sam Luis Obispo TED Talk if you want to see the TED Talk, see what we're talking about. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Louise.
Yeah.
Also, before we go, what message would you tell a young person or someone who's hanging around with the wrong crowd, dipping and dabbling in drugs, not listening to their parents, teachers, or whoever? What message do you have for that young person?
Ooh, that's a good question, and it's a very hard question also to answer. Um, because I had those, like I mentioned, positive people that reached out, my baseball coach in particular, like wanting to reach out to me. So I thought about that, like what could I say or would I say, and what would get my attention, right? Um, and me going into juvenile hall, I was fortunate enough to be able to go to juvenile hall when I worked for that organization and be able to talk to youth that are at risk and already incarcerated or have family that are potentially at risk. But for me, like what I would convey to them, not necessarily say, but convey to them in a way that I would convey to them that I would want to support and be there for them, regardless of what's going on. I can be there to listen. I can be there to help. I think like allowing them to feel supported and valued is the in my opinion, one of the better ways to allow them to explore their own feelings of what's going on and then to actually communicate those and communicate their struggles. Because what I have found is that um, I can't really say or tell them anything that's going to change their minds in that moment. It's very, very hard to do that, especially if they're wrapped up in a mentality that they've known their whole lives, and that's kind of like the way they see it, especially at that age. So for me, it'd be more about conveying my support and my being there for them, and more than anything that I can say, because I can tell them like, don't do this or don't do that, or this is my experience, which I do talk to them about the bad choices I've made and how I've harmed and how that has harmed not only them but my family and myself. But in the end, what I want to convey to them is that there are people that want to support you, that there are people that want to be there for you, and if you allow them to, they can help.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I get that. You know, um, like you said, is the change gonna come when they're ready, but just guiding them and supporting them and allowing them to explore their own situation and feelings
Yeah,
before, and let them make their own choice. That's right. Thank you, man. I appreciate you, man, Louise, for being here, man.
of
Anything you'd like to say
course.
before we go?
No, I just appreciate you too, as well. I mean, you are doing great things too, as far as like not only this, like Authors Inside, and
Yeah.
got the YouTube channel going. I subscribe,
Yeah.
by the way, so
Thank you, man. Appreciate
yeah,
it, man. Thank you for your support. We appreciate it, man.
yeah, of
And
course.
and before we go, can you let our viewers know what are you doing now? What's your occupation now?
Yeah, so I am a life coach slash case manager, and I work for an academy for formerly incarcerated firefighters actually getting trained by Cal Fire to become Cal Fire firefighters out here. So after they're released, they can apply and join this academy where they live on site. They get trained on site. There's life skills on site. So all of that, we work with Cal Fire, we work with CDCR, we work with the California Conservation Corps, and I work for ARC where we provide the housing and life skills component So I'm a life coach for them. I meet with the participants. I meet with them weekly or monthly, and kind of just support them in their growth through the program and their transition into society, and just kind of help where I can and connect them with resources where we can.
Yeah, that's nice, man. That's good, man. That sounds like a real good program. It seems like it helps people become the best version of themselves,
Yeah.
and that's a very yeah. Sounds like you're passionate about it.
No, yeah. I mean, anytime you can be a support and be a help to people like doing better for themselves, I think it's a worthwhile thing to
Thank
do.
you, man. Yeah. Well, keep up the good work, man. I'm proud of you, man. Good seeing you, man. And you're always welcome to come back, man. Just stay communicating with each other.
Of course. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Camera off.